So, what do an investor and a podcaster have in common? Well, today we're about to find out. We're talking to Philip Jayhawk Chan, and yes, he is as cool as his name implies. He started a podcast for his investment firm. He's the CEO of Lightspeed Investing. We came on to help him and his team rejuvenate this podcast and drive revenue from the podcast and all of the content it creates. So by the end of this episode, you're not going to have a testimonial of what it's like to work with us. Instead, you're going to have a strategy that you can go ahead and use for your business. So without further ado, let's get to this interview with the CEO of Lightspeed Investing on why exactly he started a podcast and what that did for his business. Let's get to it. Philip Jayhawk Chan, thank you for joining me.
What's going on, Ryan? Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to dive into this. So we're going to fill in all the context as we go. But the most important question that we ask all of our guests is, why did you start a podcast? So I'm curious to see what your answer is to this.
I love it, Ryan. In a really practical basis, I would say I wanted to get a podcast going because I love talking to people, right? I love talking to people. It is also great to get my message and brand out there. There's different ways that you can do it, but this was the method that I felt most at home with, where truthfully, I don't find me doing work, right? It's something that I enjoy, and time flies when I'm doing it. So some people, they opt in, I think, like when I personally hear content creation, that gives me a headache. But when I hear like podcasts, I'm like, great, let me do a podcast. I can use the clips, right? Audio or video, and I can have my team chop it up. So for me, it was a no-brainer because it was the best alignment with my personality.
And I'll actually add a little bit of context, which is we started working with you after you already started it. So did you know that you were going to do a podcast before like you launched this business, or like when were you like, I think we should do a podcast? Because I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, well, to be honest, you're currently speaking to me as president and CEO of Lightspeed Investing, which is a private investment firm. But before I got this role, I've always been a business owner, and I ran Leadership Visions International. That was my own leadership development firm. And so I even back in those days, I had my own
Oh.
podcast, right? And so yeah. So
No,
you
I
may
didn't
not
know
have known
that.
that.
That's
So
why
I've
I'm
got
asking.
like yeah. So I had about 10
Okay. Yep.
episodes, set. And for me, because I'm a Jayhawk from Kansas, I've been heavily influenced by our championship basketball culture. Podcasting for me, like I said, was not only the best way for me to get out there, but I can get creative, right? I can throw beats on there.
Yep.
The creatives, the marketing, the branding. I just felt like for me, it was the best all-in-one package that allowed me to really showcase who I was, what my personality was. Especially that's important, right? In the digital age, you have to put yourself out there. But how do you want to put yourself out there, right? So for me, the podcast was the most natural, I would say, modality that, like I said, not only did I feel at home with, but I felt passionate about, and I would have fun
I
doing.
love it. So tell me a little bit about Lightspeed. And I think that a podcast matches up really well with your differentiator, because you guys are disrupting. You're doing something differently, and I won't try to butcher it. I'll have you explain it. But yeah, can you give people a little bit of context as to, what Lightspeed does?
Sure. So we're a make money firm in really simple terms, right? People do business with us because we either make money for them or we teach them how to get there, right? Accredited investors at the firm starts at 5 million and up. Most other companies, they'll start at 100K and up. But we recognize not everyone have that kind of capital, right? So for those that don't have 5 million, we can, like I said, either teach you how to get there through trading futures, commodities, or stock options. And last year, I also opened up a really robust non-accredited investors division. So for those that may have anywhere between 10 to 100K, they can still take advantage of our services, right, and get it done. I would say a very unique positioning, right, and truth in how we operate is the fact that we do represent a group of medical professionals who are now investment professionals. So when we approach the markets, there's a different style, right, specifically with additional prudence, professionalism, and ethics added on top of what
Yeah,
you
and so
normally
I'll
would find.
translate that too to say there's a lot of issues when it comes to medical professionals, doctors, dentists, you name it. There's a lot of challenges that they face. But would you say that you guys are on the, helping them achieve kind of financial freedom or financial security? How do you kind of look at that?
Well, what you're mentioning is, I would say, the byproduct of what we have to offer, right? What is the crux? What is the input? Is we are able to offer them a high income skill set that they can have for the rest of their lives, similar to acquiring an MD and what that
Mm,
can lead to, right, in terms of doors and career opportunities, right? And for us, it's very similar, but it starts with this foundational skill set of, technical skill set of, can you trade and can you learn to read the markets and execute at a high level, right? So that's that's what we can offer them. Now, what they do with it is ultimately up to them, right? We've currently retired medical professionals from their careers if they wanted to, right? If they wanted to, that's the asterisk. I'm currently in the process of helping to, transition to make this a full blown career, right? But what is your desire? What is your life circumstance, right? Do you love medicine and you just want to be able to say, hey, I want to be able to go work when I want to, not because I need to? So that would be more the realm of supplemental income with this skill set. Do you want to make this a full time thing or a whole career thing where you're like, I want to cut down as many hours as possible and I want to leave medicine, right? So it depends on the
yeah.
context as well. And obviously that's different amongst everyone. So the number one thing is teaching them a skill set that will give them the the I would say luxury of choice. Really, that's what it's about. It's the
Yeah,
luxury
and
of
I think that's
choice.
why this matches up, like podcasting matches up so perfectly to what you guys do, because it's a community based thing. You're not alone. You're helping people invest, which is super scary for a lot of people, or they've had nightmare scenarios where they did invest and
Yeah,
they didn't see the return. Or this, listen, this is,
yeah,
I mean, as you know, finance and podcasting and content, it goes hand in hand, right? It's like the longer you wait, the
yeah. No,
better it is,
absolutely.
right? And or however you want to kind of couch it.
And I mean, it opens up a lot of conversations to where you learn stories. I recently had a fellow physician come through, like, we're talking about multi-millions of dollars that was, in his savings that he turned over to, a real estate project, and it
Yep.
went south, but the more important thing is like the acumen, right? It's like, as much as I sympathize and empathize with that individual, like, why did you bet the
Yeah.
farm? You
Oh
never
yeah.
bet the farm.
Yeah.
Like, why would you not dip
Yep.
your toes, with like 5% of what you, or whatever the minimum requirement was, just to see how it would play out, like a scientific
Yep.
experiment,
Yep.
right? So now that individual is, obviously really hurt because of one simple decision. So, that's where we find passion, I think, in helping our fellow medical professionals first and foremost, um, be equipped with the business and investing acumen that they would normally not have because they went to med school, right? You're so indoctrinated in all things medical sciences, it's hard to be an expert, develop expertise, right, in this arena. So that's what we're here to try to ultimately do, is close that gap,
So
right?
with us, if we're talking podcasting, at least for our agency, we're gonna talk LinkedIn too, because you know how we're diehards of that platform.
Yeah, you know how we get
That's how I
down,
found you,
baby.
man. So, and then
You know?
we're gonna get to what we ended up working on too. But what's that been like? Like posting every day. Having a social media team. How important is it to you to have the social media team and like the help that you have for that?
Oh man, it's so important. It's leverage, man. I mean, that's why, I think I was just on another podcast before we hopped on, and he asked me like what the biggest difference was between me, you know, as an aspiring surgeon versus me now as president CEO, and I told him it's leverage. Because, like, there's so many things that I could be doing, but it's more important that I create structures, and with the right leadership bring in the right people to lead those structures, right? Because as you know, trading and investing is a very technical aspect. Like I'm the only one in the firm that doesn't
Yeah.
do that, and I have to be, because if I did that, my energy and bandwidth would be gone to actually expand the business. There's no way I can grow the business if I was just a technician working inside,
Yep.
right? So in regards to what you're saying, dude, like it's huge because I definitely have to know how things should be done and the outcomes, right, and the KPIs and the metrics. But like, no, I can't be the social media manager managing my LinkedIn. I cannot be the one posting. I cannot be, it's too much. Because I have to focus on bigger things, right, to grow the firm. So yeah, I mean, it's monumental to have the right team for the purpose of leverage, so that I can, gain time back. Really, that's all that it's about. I can gain time back and I can still have results
Yeah, and
being
I think
generated.
this is the modern CEO. Like, this is how it's supposed to be, in my opinion. I think the CEO, on top of the CEO has two jobs, right? Develop the people, grow the revenue, right? It's like that's the jobs. Now, everything else, you might have six other jobs, but that's the job of the CEO, right?
That's like, you mean that's like the core
Yeah, the
bread
core,
and
right? What are
butter.
you doing every day? You're developing
Yeah,
your people. You're
yeah,
figuring out more ways. How do we grow this thing, right? Because that's
yeah, yeah.
there's nobody else's job, right?
For me, what I like to say is offer
For sure. I
creation.
think that falls
Okay,
under revenue
offer,
generation, right?
yeah, offer creation, and then corporate structure and strategic leadership empowerment to put the right people in place, into the structures that I have created. And then once I do that, then I brainstorm from here what offers are
And I
possible.
like to say that podcasting is like it's a big boy activity, right?
Is that
I think
true?
so. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess I'm a big boy
No,
then.
really. But it's, yeah,
You know
man.
what I
But
mean?
like it's meaning that, okay, if you're really the CEO, okay, then that is the person who, listen, we just saw this with TikTok, right? And this might come out a couple months after this, but he just gets on and he just records a video, no script, right to the phone. Hey, this is what's going on. And there's many other CEOs who do this. Obviously, Elon's on one side of the spectrum, and then you have the Zucks and the Bezos. But these are, like, as a CEO, you are whether you're, there may be multiple faces of the company, but you're the voice of the company. Hence
Mm.
why like, not sure if you should really be sitting there trying to optimize your site for SEO. Maybe instead you should be the one on a
No.
podcast broadcasting, right? Because
Yeah.
this is the voice of the company, you know?
Well, and I think what you're also talking about too is like the transition from a
Mm,
solopreneur into a bona fide leader of an organization. Because, dude, when you're a solopreneur, you have to wear multiple hats. You have to do everything. You have to do the marketing, and then you have to do the sales, and then you have to do the client fulfillment, and you have to figure out how do you put in systems and processes to grow and scale. But if you are at a certain level of growth and you now have team members and you're blessed to have leverage amongst those team members, then yeah, you get to be more, I would say, tunnel vision on the things that you need to do, right? And not, you can still wear multiple hats, but it's like those multiple hats are not across multiple like responsibilities of different realms. It's like it's more streamlined. It's like you may have to wear multiple hats, but it's just
yeah.
within these things,
Yeah. Well,
right?
exactly. And you want to, yeah.
Within the
Yeah, you
executive
want to
lane, so to
delegate
speak. Yeah.
once, right? It's like delegation is not the goal. It's delegating one time, creating a system, right? And these are things that you learn along the way. But let's look at the other side of the spectrum, right? So you have the solopreneur side, which we've worked with solopreneurs for years. We're moving out of it because we have a different mission. We have a different vision now.
Yeah.
For the business owner who's seasoned, the seasoned CEO, successful, has revenue, has a team, what would your advice be when it comes to starting to create content and starting to actually get out there and talk? Because you're good at this. I don't know if you were always good at this. I think you were. But what's your advice to somebody who maybe hasn't been on the podcast or hasn't started theirs, but is successful, but hasn't done this whole face of the company thing?
Well, I mean, do you want to be the face of the company, or do you want to anoint someone to do it? Again, you don't have to put your face out there. You could do faceless. But again, like it goes back to, I think the first question you asked me was like, why did I go with the podcasting? Like, because for me, I knew it was going to be my best modality of reaching people in this now very heavy digital age that we live in. So you got to ask yourself, it's like, dude, like, what is your meaning of life that you want to go after, right? In this case, it's like, what is the marketing channel that speaks to you? Like, gun to your head, if you had to, you got to put
Yep.
yourself out there.
Yeah.
How are you going to do it? You know, it doesn't have to be the podcast though. It could be a live.
yeah. Well, it's
right?
also, yeah,
You know what I
but
mean?
it's also, it's
Like,
not, and I know you'll agree with this, but like, it's not just, it's really 50% only marketing. The other half is branding. And then within that is personal brand, right? So if
personal branding, yeah.
if you are on 50 podcasts and then have your own podcast, and then you have somebody who's a CEO of an investment company who doesn't do that, which one are they going to want to speak on a stage, right? Or which person is going to have a quicker way to reach?
Well, I think what you're basically getting at though is by putting yourself out there in a podcast format, you are allowing strangers to get familiar with you, right? Because here's the thing, like, you know, in the modality of a podcast, you really get to showcase naturally your own personality. It's not like it's a webinar presentation, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain moments in these podcasts. It's almost like a podcast. I kind of see it as like a one-on-one reality show, if that makes sense. It's like a one-on-one, microscopic view of like the person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you get to really, with certain questions and conversational points, you get to really do a deep dive on that person. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, normally in a very formal business presentation, it's just a business aspect. So I think, it's that personal touch that you get. You know what I mean? That you probably won't get in other formats, right, outside of a podcast, if that's what you're
No,
looking
well,
towards.
that's not even what I'm leaning towards. That's just reality, right? If somebody
That's true.
books a call with you, I don't know how easy that is, but or if they're interested in investing or however you take calls, this is who you are. Like, this is who I am. We've worked together for I don't know 5 or 10 hours at least. Like, you know me, I know you.
Well,
In
months
terms of,
actually.
yeah, you're right, months. But like,
Yeah,
this is us.
yeah,
This is me on a call with Philip. This is Philip on a call
yeah.
with
It's
a
very
client.
authentic.
This is just how we
Yeah,
are,
that it's
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
and that's the opposite of exactly what you said, right?
Authenticity and originality. I think that's what gets showcased at the end of the day, right? Because I think, like, on a, what do you call it, on like a landing page, you see a video like sales funnel,
Yep.
whatever, and you see those videos pop up. Like, you may not get that warmth that you would get in the way that you show up in the podcast, and that's what you're, probably addressing here. It's like I said, those little personal revelations
Yep.
of
And
who
it's
you
not
are.
but it's not
You know,
supposed to replace things, right? And that's where I think that I'm not saying it can't, but the podcast is supposed to do what the other things are not doing, right? If the email list is
mm.
the email newsletter is something that somebody reads for 35 seconds. I mean, if you're lucky, right? A post is something that somebody sees. The post lasts a couple days and then it's gone. Then the algorithm eats it.
Well, I guess in that case, like what you're kind of talking about is like the podcast is the most genuine form of human
It's
connection.
foundational
That's
to
the
humans. This is what
like
we've been
Yeah,
doing
that's because
since the beginning of
that's what
language, you know?
yeah, right. Except it's just modern day communication being
Yes. And we're just
showcased,
doing it
really.
through a
You
virtual
know what I mean?
the bridge is
Yeah,
virtual, but the thing
yeah, yeah,
itself,
yeah, yeah.
right? And so on yeah.
It's just that's why it's so
Yep.
real. That's why I said it was like a little one-on-one
It is
reality
well,
show.
exactly.
But like what I mean by that is like it's not like a fake reality show that's scripted with
Exactly. Yeah,
actors.
well,
Like it's
now
a
reality shows are not real. So now what reality shows would be if they were real, right? Which would be unscripted, which would be off the cuff,
right,
right?
right,
So there's something
right.
that I really like about your show that not everybody, not all of our clients, that not many people that we've worked with do, which is you're not the only host of the podcast, right? So can you tell? Yeah, who else is incorporated into this podcast? Because I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Well, sometimes I bring on my right hand, into my podcast. But more importantly, I think I try to bring in voices that are not only authentic, but they are authoritative in their own right, in the sense that they know that what they're
And
talking
well,
about.
what about like the
So
doctors that you work with? Would you consider them clients then, or you know, yeah,
yeah, absolutely. A lot of, I mean, we have a very unique policy at the firm, which is, a lot of the people that do a lot of things with us, they happen to be clients first and foremost, right?
yeah? So why involve them in the podcast? Like, why is that important to you?
Well, it's important because I think the ones that opt in to do that, they see what we're about, they understand the mission and the vision, and they
Yeah.
want to help contribute.
Yeah, and so that is, I mean, like, listen, what I'm trying to get at is like, it seems obvious to us why, right? But it's this very weird thing of like, we have to like keep people behind the scenes. We have to make sure nobody knows who our clients are. Like, dude, if you want to call a client, like Philip, to be honest, I'm not going to really give them your number. I feel like you're pretty busy, but I literally could give a prospect Philip's number. They would call him and he would be like, yeah, here's what we did with podcast principles. Right now we don't have to do that because we're doing this episode, right? So that replaces the need for that. But what I'm saying is like, I don't understand having people behind the curtain, right? And I get it if there's NDAs and things like that, right? And there's things that you do, you can't showcase publicly, but I don't know. I think the more that's out there, the better, because it just gives people another chance to get to know you.
I think it depends on like what type of business are you running. If you're more so like selling units, like of material things, it doesn't make sense. But if you're a service provider to some degree, like, and you're working, right? You see what I mean? Like
100%.
hand in hand, done with
Yeah.
you, done
Yeah.
for you. You're in tighter communication. It's not like, hey, Ryan, here's the product that you ordered.
Yep.
Like I think that definitely, has to be showcased, like, because, you know, um, it it showcases the relationships that you're able to form, right? And it showcases the
And
results
there's a
that you can
fear
generate.
though. There's a fear that business owners have, especially like marketers, branding people, creative service firms, like you're saying, service businesses, where it's like we can't tell them. Why would we tell them how we do things? Then they're gonna go do it. It's like, no, they're not gonna do it. I guarantee that.
Yeah,
It'll make
yeah,
them
man, because
realize
not
if you make it look easy, then they're gonna try it and they're gonna fail, and then they're gonna come to you
right.
anyway, right?
Yeah,
But
that's right. That's right. I think, you have to realize, like, the reason why people, like, for me, I could probably have my team figure out all the podcasting stuff, but it's just not going to. The number one thing that we can't replace is
yep,
the passion. Like to us, it would be a chore. Like, but to you, like, you love this. I mean, you have the DJing background, right? You're very integrated with music, and you love marketing. You love thinking about all things marketing. Like, I'm not like that. That's not how I'm wired.
yep.
So, like, for me to take on what you do, we could be doing the same thing, but like I'd be like, let me get a water, like let me get a breather. Whereas like you're like, oh, I'm just getting started, like, and that's the
Yeah, and
difference, I think.
hey, listen, that's how it is for all of us, right? And I hire a lot of people to help us, right? I hire a lot of vendors. I pay a lot of money in coaching, as do you, because that's the reality, right? Like we're just trying to be ourselves more, right? We're not trying to be somebody else, right? So
Hmm.
on that note, um, why podcast principles, man? What was your experience like putting you on the
Oh
spot?
yeah, well, you are the most professional podcast resource that I think I've ran into. Just from when I first met you, and discussing like, what do you do, how long have you been doing it, who do you work with. And when you especially told me that you specifically focus in on LinkedIn, I'm like, that's what I want someone who's a specialist on LinkedIn. Like, I'm on LinkedIn, a lot of my clients and prospects are on LinkedIn, right? I'm not currently really out there in Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube yet, right? But LinkedIn makes the most sense because of our natural, I would say, audience that we resonate with the most. And I think, LinkedIn is a place for professionals. So when you told me that you only operated on LinkedIn and you're a specialist on LinkedIn, that gave me the confidence to explore more because that's what I was looking for. You have to realize that, right? Like I value professionalism. I value specialists. And, for me, when we had that conversation, you just had those two check marks.
So
So
let's
it
look
makes
at the
sense.
before and after too. Before we started working together versus now. We could fast forward to now, but even I know just by even looking at your profile. But can you talk a little bit about what we did with your team? And obviously, they did a lot of the work.
Yeah,
Obviously, we're not taking credit for that.
sure,
But
sure. Well, you trained them, right? And that was the whole point. It was a done with you capacity, but done with you training, right? With some done for you sprinkled in there. But I would say, like overall, it helped simplify the message. It helped provide clarity, and I would say it helped, make me more credible and visible. With the modality of podcast short
yep,
clips, right? And that's super important. Obviously, you also help give assessments to how I can make my setups better, right? Getting a new camera. I mean, this camera is way more, bit higher definition than what I was working with. How I should set up my mic, like subtle things, right? That, like I said, I wouldn't really be thinking about, but you're like, this is important. Like making sure that the camera is like eye level. I mean, like these small things that we talked about. You know, so I would say just the repositioning, the clarity and the simplicity of the message to the
yeah,
audience
I appreciate
is
that.
key.
And it was your team that made it possible for us to do that. Obviously,
Sure.
we're coming in as a vendor going like, hey, like, yeah, we kind of we're going to come in and we're going to change some things, but here's why, right?
Yeah.
And when everybody
Right.
works as a cohesive team, it makes it so much easier. You's leading. We have Evelyn, we have Matt, we have Shazil. So shout out to your team first and foremost. Shout out to my team. And it was
That's right.
really like it wasn't a like okay, we come in, we're gonna do these things, and then we're gonna go. Like it was a partnership. That's what it felt like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my CMO always said, like, the attributes of a great marketer is not like, hey, we're gonna come in, we're gonna get you leads, and then we're gonna get out. It's like, okay, well, what do you have in place right now? And in your specific scenario, it's like a medical diagnosis, right? But providing the right business diagnosis. And then with the relevant business prescription. So it's like, what kind of systems and processes are you currently missing? And here's the gap that we can help close. Maybe we have to do some of this before we even entertain our products and services, right? Because you're lacking these things. And so as opposed to just coming in and being like, all right, here's what you get, is like taking a clear look at what exactly does that organization need, right? In
And
in,
it's
in
hard,
their own
man.
right.
It's hard. That's why I have people who help me with my finances or help me with business coaching, life coaching, because you can't see it. And sometimes you need somebody from the outside to come in. And that's what you need.
Professionals, though.
Specialists, like you said.
Professionals is, yeah,
So that's a
specialists,
perfect
yeah.
transition. So tell people about your podcast, where they can find it and all that stuff. But if you want to give them the elevator
Sure.
pitch and what you're really talking about on the show podcast on a weekly basis.
Well, I mean, so the show's Lightspeed Investing podcast, right? You can find me on Spotify, and it's a I would say compilation of me interviewing fellow clients, investors, successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and physicians. Where we cover all things investing and and proper business building, right? So if you are someone that enjoys getting value out of, I would say, you know, having the right wisdoms in these areas, look no further, as we provide a lot of
Yeah.
that.
So if you are, I would also say, yes, if you are thinking, yeah, maybe I've tried some stuff in the past or I had a real estate deal that didn't work or whatever it might
Yeah,
be, Philip's your guy. Anything investing related, but especially what you guys specialize in. I recommend it.
yeah,
So we'll have that info in the show notes. Anything else you want to leave them with here on this podcast?
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure that they know that this asset class that we specialize in is the global financial markets, right? Specifically within alternative investments, the derivatives, which are commodities or futures, commodities, and stock options.
That's it. If that is of interest to you, we have the link in the show notes, and also they can find you on LinkedIn is the best way to get to you, or
Yeah, LinkedIn, absolutely. Philip Jayhawk Chan. Make sure you type Jayhawk, and you'll definitely
Philip,
find me.
it's been a pleasure. It's great to work with you and your team, but also great to do this podcast. You are not a client, man. You're a friend. Obviously, you are a client. My business coach is like, make sure they're clients first and friends second, or whatever, But it's like we're friends, man. And it's great.
We are,
We connected
absolutely.
on the
Yeah.
basketball thing. We'll touch on that next episode, maybe. But yeah, man, appreciate you, Philip.
Basketball, rhythm and flow.
All the good stuff in life,
You know
man.
what it is.
That's it.
Yeah, man.
That's it. Basketball and
That's
hip hop,
right.
baby. That's how we roll, man. And podcasts, don't forget
Yeah,
that.
man.
So appreciate you, Philip. Thanks so much
That's right. So-
for joining me, man.
Likewise, appreciate you as well,
All right,
man.
folks.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you in the next one. Peace.